I thought this was some evil thing I was bringing upon myself, and I refused any kind of treatment until I was 35 years old. By then having children who were being abused when I was out of control.
She was once America's darling, the sweet, talented girl who won an Oscar at just 16 and seemed destined for a life of endless success. Patty Duke had it all: fame, beauty, and the adoration of millions. But behind that perfect Hollywood image was a young woman crying out for help. Her life, though glittering on the outside, was crumbling within. Patty's world became a storm of addiction, emotional chaos, and heartbreak. She longed for real love, but what she often found instead were lies, betrayal, and disappointment. Some women even came forward with shocking claims about the men in their lives, leaving Patty feeling lost and broken. Alcohol became her escape, her way to numb the pain that fame only magnified. But it wasn't just her career that suffered. It was her spirit, her health, and the love she spent her life searching for. This is the emotional and shocking story of how alcoholism tore apart the life of one of Hollywood's brightest stars, Patty Duke. Anna Marie Duke was born on December 14, 1946, at New York's Bellevue Hospital, a fragile light born into a stormy household. The youngest of 3 children, she grew up in the working-class neighborhood of Elmhurst, Queens, alongside her brother, Raymond, and sister, Carol. Their home, though humble, was shadowed by turmoil. Her father, John Patrick Duke, a handyman and cab driver of Irish roots, struggled with alcoholism, while her mother, Frances, battled severe depression that often erupted into violence. Life for little Anna Marie was anything but peaceful. When she was 6, her mother forced her father out of the house, shattering what little stability they had left. 2 years later, the child's fate took another turn. She was handed over to a pair of talent managers, John and Ethel Ross, who promised to shape her into a star. But behind their polished smiles lay exploitation. They lied about her age, faked her credentials, and took a cruel hold over every part of her young life. They even decided that Anna Marie Duke no longer existed. "You're Patty now," they told her, erasing her identity and replacing it with a marketable name. Under their control, she was given alcohol and pills, robbed of her earnings, and made to endure abuse that no child should ever face. Her father vanished from her world, and her mother appeared only to wash the Rosses' laundry. In the glittering world of show business, the little girl once known as Anna Marie was gone, replaced by Patty Duke, a name born from manipulation, but destined to shine despite the darkness that surrounded her. Patty Duke's struggle with alcoholism was not just a personal downfall. It was a slow, painful unraveling that began long before she ever picked up a drink. From childhood, Patty lived a life filled with emotional pain and manipulation. As a young girl, she was thrust into fame under the strict control of her managers, who exploited her success and stripped her of a normal childhood. She endured emotional and physical abuse, and by the time she became a star, she was already carrying deep wounds that fame couldn't heal. Alcohol became her only escape, a way to quiet the voices of trauma, fear, and loneliness that haunted her. At first, drinking made her feel free. It gave her temporary comfort from the unbearable pressure to perform and appear perfect. But what started as an occasional relief soon turned into a dangerous dependency. She drank to sleep, to work, to feel normal. Over time, her addiction began to consume her completely. Her moods became unpredictable, and she often lashed out at the people she loved most. Friends and family tried to help, but she pushed them away, trapped in denial and shame. The more she drank, the deeper she sank into depression and self-destruction. Her career, which once shone with promise, began to suffer as well. Alcohol made her unreliable on set. She missed rehearsals, forgot lines, and became difficult to work with. Producers and directors began to see her as a risk, and the offers that once flooded in slowly disappeared. The Hollywood darling who had once captivated audiences with her talent and charm was now struggling to hold her life together behind the scenes. The emotional toll was devastating. Patty's marriages fell apart one after another, and her children often witnessed the chaos that addiction created at home. Her mental health spiraled as alcoholism intensified her bipolar disorder, causing wild emotional swings and unbearable guilt. She lived in constant conflict, wanting to quit but unable to break free from the very thing destroying her. It wasn't until much later in life that Patty finally confronted her addiction head-on. With help, she began the long road to recovery and bravely spoke about her experiences, hoping to help others who were silently suffering. Though she eventually found peace and stability, the years lost to alcoholism left deep scars on her heart and her career. Patty Duke's story stands as a haunting reminder of how addiction can grow out of pain, consume even the strongest spirit, and destroy everything in its path before redemption finally arrives. By the early 1980s, Patty Duke had lived through storms few could see behind her bright Hollywood smile. In her 1987 autobiography, she revealed a truth she had carried in silence for years. She had been diagnosed with manic depression, now known as bipolar disorder. Long before mental health was openly discussed, Duke became one of the first celebrities to speak honestly about her struggles. Her emotional battles had begun as a teenager, marked by severe anorexia that left her weighing barely 76 pounds, and later spiraled into dark depressions and reckless highs. She attempted suicide in 1967 and was hospitalized again 2 years later, lost in a cycle she couldn't understand. In an interview with PBS, she recalled how, at 19, she could barely get out of bed for months, consumed by tears and exhaustion. Then, without warning, the pendulum would swing, sending her into manic frenzies of denial and impulsive behavior. Heavy alcohol became a way to quiet the chaos inside her, but it only deepened her despair. Her illness took a toll on her family, too. She later admitted that her children suffered during her worst years. At 35, when her life felt on the brink of collapse, Duke finally sought help. A psychiatrist diagnosed her with manic depression and prescribed lithium, a treatment she credited with saving her life. "It gave me life," she said. With time, therapy, and sobriety, she learned to rebuild herself, turning her pain into purpose. In the years that followed, Patty Duke became a passionate voice for mental health awareness, using her own survival as proof that healing was possible. Patty Duke's rise to stardom began when she was barely old enough to understand what fame meant. In the late 1950s, she appeared on the soap opera The Brighter Day, marking one of her earliest television roles. Around the same time, she featured in commercials, print ads, and short films, including the 1958 black and white short An American Girl. By age 12, Duke was already a familiar face on American television. That same year, she appeared on the game show The $64,000 Question, astonishing viewers with her knowledge of popular music and walking away with $32,000, though the joy was short-lived when the show was later exposed as rigged. Summoned to testify before a Senate committee, the young actress broke down in tears as she confessed she had been coached to lie. It was an early and painful introduction to how the entertainment world could manipulate innocence for spectacle. In 1959, Duke's star began to rise when she appeared as Tootie Smith in a TV adaptation of Meet Me in St. Louis. But her real breakthrough came later that year when she was cast as Helen Keller in The Miracle Worker on Broadway. Her raw, emotional performance opposite Anne Bancroft as Anne Sullivan captivated audiences and critics alike. The production ran for nearly 2 years, and Duke made history when her name appeared above the play's title. An extraordinary honor for someone so young. When The Miracle Worker was adapted for film in 1962, Duke's performance earned her the Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress, making her, at 1962 just 16, the youngest person ever to win an Oscar in a competitive category at that time. The film also brought her face-to-face with Helen Keller herself, a meeting that left a lasting impression on the young star. Duke's transition to television fame came soon after. Inspired by her dual nature, bright and mischievous on one hand, serious and thoughtful on the other, writer Sidney Sheldon created The Patty Duke Show in 1963. In it, Duke played identical cousins, the carefree, fun-loving Patty Lane and the refined, worldly Kathy Lane. The show was a hit, and audiences adored Duke's effortless charm as she switched between two contrasting personalities. Surrounded by a talented supporting cast that included William Schallert and Gene Byron, the show ran for 3 successful seasons and earned Duke an Emmy nomination. In 1999, the beloved series was revisited with a reunion movie, The Patty Duke Show, still rockin' in Brooklyn Heights, bringing her iconic characters back to life for a new generation. Following the show's end in 1966, Duke transitioned into more mature film and television roles. She delivered a Golden Globe-winning performance in Me, Natalie, 1969, playing a young woman struggling to find confidence and independence in New York's Greenwich Village. The role marked her successful evolution from child star to respected dramatic actress. Television remained her artistic home through the 1970s and 1980s. She won her first Emmy for My Sweet Charlie, 1970, a moving portrayal of a pregnant runaway who finds unexpected friendship and understanding. 2 more Emmys followed, for Captains and the Kings, 1977, and for her powerful performance as Anne Sullivan in the 1980 TV remake of The Miracle Worker, this time mentoring Melissa Gilbert as Helen Keller. Her later projects, including The Women's Room, 1980, and George Washington, 1984, earned additional acclaim and nominations, further cementing her place among television's finest actresses. Beyond acting, Duke made history in 1985, when she became only the second woman ever elected president of the Screen Actors Guild. Though her term was marked by tension and political challenges, she gained wide respect for uniting a divided membership and standing firm in negotiations that strengthened the Guild's future. In her later years, Duke continued to work steadily but selectively. She appeared in films such as By Design, 1981, and A Time to Triumph, 1986, and even portrayed herself in the 1990 TV adaptation of her autobiography, Call Me Anna. She delighted audiences with guest roles in shows like Touched by an Angel, Glee, and Hawaii Five-0, and even stepped behind the camera to direct a stage revival of The Miracle Worker in 2011. Though her pace slowed, her passion for performing never faded. She returned to Broadway in Oklahoma, and later enchanted audiences in Wicked as Madame Morrible. In 2011, she reunited with her most famous creation, reprising her dual role as Patty and Kathy Lane in a nostalgic series of U.S. government commercials promoting Social Security, a fitting tribute to the timelessness of her charm. Her final screen appearance came in 2015 on Disney's Liv and Maddie, once again playing identical twins, a warm, full-circle moment in a career defined by duality. In 1967, Patty Duke took on one of her most talked-about roles, the ambitious and self-destructive Neely O'Hara, in the now cult classic Valley of the Dolls. Acting alongside Sharon Tate and Barbara Parkins, Duke brought raw intensity to the screen, portraying a young woman whose rise to stardom was shadowed by pills, pressure, and emotional collapse. In the film's trailer, Neely is described as such a nice kid, until someone put her name in lights and turned her into a lush, a line that hit uncomfortably close to home. For many, the role felt like a mirror reflecting Duke's own chaotic reality behind the camera. As critics praised and questioned her performance, whispers began that the casting was too perfect, that Neely O'Hara wasn't just a character, she was Patty Duke herself. The rumors only grew louder in 1970, when Duke won an Emmy for My Sweet Charlie. Her acceptance speech, rambling and disjointed, fueled speculation of drug use. But years later, Duke set the record straight. "It wasn't drugs or alcohol," she explained. "I was having a complete emotional breakdown." While others could fall apart in private, her unraveling happened under the unforgiving glare of live television. The moment became a haunting reminder of how blurred the line had become between the role she played and the pain she lived. Patty Duke's personal life was as complex and emotional as the characters she brought to life on screen. A devout Catholic girl who once dreamed of becoming a nun, she grew into a woman who spent her later years searching for spiritual peace in many faiths. "I've studied Buddhism, explored Judaism, even tried Christian Science," she once said with gentle humor, calling herself a religious dabbler. Still, she admitted she sometimes returned to the Catholic Church, saying, "The child in me needs the bells and smells." At just 18, Duke married television director Harry Falk, a man 13 years older. The union severed her remaining ties with her exploitative childhood managers, the Rosses, but it also threw her deeper into emotional chaos. She struggled with violent mood swings, anorexia, heavy drinking, and several overdoses. The marriage collapsed in 1969, leaving her fragile and adrift. A year later, in 1970, she made headlines again, pregnant and suddenly married to rock promoter Michael Tell in an impulsive attempt to give her child a name. The marriage lasted only 13 days before being annulled. Her son, Sean, was born the following year. For years, Duke believed that actor Daisy Arnaz Jr. was his biological father, only for DNA testing decades later to confirm that Tell was, in fact, Sean's father. In 1972, she found love again with actor John Astin, who adopted Sean and shared with her a son, Mackenzie. They worked together often, and for a time she went by Patty Duke Astin, embracing family life amid her ongoing struggles. She also adopted Astin's 3 other sons, though the adoptions were later reversed with her blessing. The marriage ended in 1985. A year later, Duke found lasting peace with her 4th husband, Michael Pierce, a former drill sergeant she met while filming A Time to Triumph. Together they settled in the quiet of Hayden, Idaho, adopting a son named Kevin and building a life away from Hollywood's noise. She became a loving stepmother to Pierce's 2 daughters, and often signed her work Anna Duke Pierce, reflecting the serenity she had finally found. Yet even in those calm years, life tested her. In 2002, she suffered a serious skull fracture after a horse accident on their property. Still, through every heartbreak and recovery, Patty Duke remained a survivor, a woman who fought for love, faith, and identity in a life that rarely gave her peace easily. When Patty Duke was finally diagnosed with bipolar disorder at 35, it was as if the fog that had haunted her for decades began to lift. For the first time, she understood the chaos that had ruled her life. And with that understanding came a sense of relief. No longer trapped in confusion or shame, she began the long road toward healing and forgiveness. "For me, forgiveness has been key," she once said softly. "I went back to as many people as I could remember, the ones I had hurt or frightened during that dark time, and I asked for forgiveness." Her journey toward redemption led her to tell her story in her own words. In 1987, she released Call Me Anna, followed by A Brilliant Madness in 1992. Both memoirs shattered the silence surrounding mental illness, earning praise not only for their honesty, but for their courage. Through them, Duke transformed from a troubled star into a beacon of hope for millions who struggled in silence. In a heartfelt interview that same year, she reflected, "I can't fix the past, and I can't buy back the time. But I can take responsibility and help people understand there was something else going on." It was a confession not of shame, but of strength. The voice of a woman who had finally made peace with the pain that once defined her. In the final years of her life, Patty Duke found a peace that had long eluded her. After decades of emotional battles, she devoted herself to mental health advocacy and rebuilding bonds with her family. She became not just an actress remembered for her brilliance, but a voice for understanding and compassion, a woman who had turned her suffering into purpose. Then, in March 2016, tragedy struck. At 69, Duke died suddenly and unexpectedly from sepsis, caused by a ruptured intestine. The news stunned fans around the world who had followed her story of survival and resilience. Her son, Lord of the Rings actor Sean Astin, spoke tenderly about his mother's final days, revealing that she had been in great pain before her passing. Yet, he said, her final moments were peaceful. It was a very powerful experience, he shared. In her last moment, she was at peace. Aston reflected on how his mother's later years had become her greatest role, not on stage or screen, but in life itself. The more she opened up, the more she shared of her pain, he said. She found a new identity, to help others through what she had gone through. Patty Duke's legacy endures not only through her unforgettable performances in The Miracle Worker and Valley of the Dolls, but also through her courage to speak openly about mental illness when few dared to. She broke barriers, changed perceptions, and gave hope to countless others battling the same invisible war. In death, as in life, Patty Duke remained what she had always been, a survivor, a fighter, and a light for those lost in the dark.